You're listening to Experience Imagination, a themed entertainment design podcast presented by Falcon's Creative Group. Every episode, we discuss a new topic with a panel of creative professionals. Hi, I'm Cecil McPurry, Chief Executive Officer of Falcons.
Welcome, listeners. Happy to have you back for another episode of Experience Imagination. I'm Audrey DeLong. We're going to take a close look at brand licensing on today's show. So first of all, what is brand licensing? Well, it's the process of leasing a trademarked or copyrighted property for use in connection with a product, service, or promotion. A big goal is to reinforce an existing brand's image or bring awareness to a brand that is new to consumers. It's hard to not see examples of brand licensing when you leave your house or go online. What we talk about on today's episode will just be skimming the surface of this multi-billion-dollar global industry. But with our excellent lineup of guests, I have no doubt you will walk away with a treasure trove of knowledge. Before we bring in those guests, I want to have a quick chat with Daryl White, who is our Executive Vice President of Global Licensing and Business Development. Hello, Daryl.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So you deal with brand licensing. What does that entail?
As we've had our basis in location-based entertainment for the last 23 years, really for us, it's been connection to that location-based entertainment. So for example, in the past, working with Marvel for IMG Worlds of Adventure, we work with that brand, Cartoon Network as well, the Hunger Games and so forth. But now we've really expanded our footprint in the licensing industry and brand activations because we're getting into more than just location-based entertainment, so media content and so forth.
Okay, great. So we exhibited at Licensing Expo. Falcons Beyond had a booth. I know you were there. What were our main goals as a company?
Last year was the first year that we exhibited, and we came out quite strong and said, hey, we're a pretty good company. You might want to get to know us, and we have a plan to expand intellectual properties and brands, really in a 360-degree 3D environment. So where a lot of licensing agencies and brand activation companies work to expand brands through media content and other activations. With our history in location-based entertainment, that really gives us an edge. And we said, look, we want to expand brands into physical activations. We want to do Roblox games, consumer products, media content, and so forth. So over the last year, we've been really laser focused on doing that. And we've done that with our own in-house brand, the Kathmandu Story. So in the last year, we've released a mobile game. We've released a Roblox game, extremely popular. We've released a trading card game, and we, of course, opened Kathmandu Park Punta Cana, physical location. And we also just announced that we're in development of a preschool animated series based on the Yeti characters in our Kathmandu lore.
Okay, so at the expo, Daryl, what did you learn about industry trends?
Yeah, the industry, I think, is continuing to expand its understanding of connecting brands with physical locations, whether it's brand activations, location-based entertainment. And it was also interesting to see that in addition to just like standard IPs that you'd think of like cartoon brands or TV shows or movies, we get into celebrities and characters and chefs who also want to expand into physical activations, whether it's, a brand activation that's a temporary or really going into doing a location-based entertainment activation. So that's been really interesting. It's something that we've been focused on, as I said, for the last 23 years, is those physical activations. But now to see the rest of the industry coming along and saying, hey, we understand the value of connecting people with their favorite brands at every possible opportunity. And I think that's going to continue to expand.
I think you're right about that. And we're probably going to hear more about that from our guests. So thank you for setting up this episode.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I'm now joined by Maura Regan, who is the president of Licensing International. Hey there.
Hey there. How are you?
I'm doing well. And how are you?
I'm good. I'm recovering from Licensing Expo, but really, thank you so much for including us in your podcast series. Super excited.
Well, we definitely are going to get into that. We can't wait to talk to you about that. But just as an introduction to our listeners first, tell us about your background and how you broke into the field.
Well, I think like many who find themselves in licensing, it really was an accidental career, a good accidental career. I did not go to school for it. And actually, one of the things that we're working on is creating a curriculum around licensing for this very reason. And I serendipitously fell into this through friends of a friend, as so many of us find ourselves in this career. And it's just been a great place to be. And I've never looked back.
So what role does Licensing International play on a global scale to help businesses better understand brand licensing?
We really function as sort of the nexus of all things licensing on a global basis. And our mission, we are a nonprofit trade association, and our goal as a mission-based organization is to effectively advance the business of licensing around the world. And that really means from all sides. So yes, for those within licensing to help you advance your business, and we can look forward to talking about LBE, but as well for the broader business community to understand the opportunities that licensing affords businesses of all sizes and all kinds. It's a great business model, and we believe certainly that it is a business that more companies should take advantage of. And so we function really as the central sort of meeting point for all things licensing, and we work very closely with industry leaders and business leaders to help advance licensing globally.
Well, I'm sure that keeps you very busy, but you just mentioned that you were at Licensing Expo in Vegas. That's the world's largest event that's dedicated to licensing and brand extension. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
It's definitely a monster event. I mean, the scope and magnitude must be off the charts. So I just wanted to get your take because Licensing International is the official sponsor there. Tell us about the event.
As you've mentioned, it really is where everyone from around the world comes together. And while it's officially 3 days, so the show generally opens on a Tuesday and closes on a Thursday, what we really see are that folks start coming in Friday night and so start taking meetings and having showcases, which are sort of like these upfronts where you're really presenting Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then the show officially opens on Tuesday. So it really is a week-long, dare I say, celebration of all things licensing. The business of licensing is all about creative partnerships and collaborations. So what you see during Licensing Expo is a range of intellectual property owners, such as you've got the studios, everything from theatrical releases to streaming to television, linear TV shows, to TikTok, content creators meeting with manufacturer licensees to see about creating something that is completely magical and effectively bigger than either entity separately. So together, they're that much bigger.
Are influencers people that also attend this event, and what do they get out of it?
For influencers, it's an important show to see what's coming next, what's out there, what are the studios breaking, what's sort of interesting and exciting from a content development perspective. Frankly, a lot of the influencers are also looking to license their name. So they're also looking for partners to take their name and their likeness and extend the reach through all kinds of product applications and collaborations and partnerships.
I see. Yeah, so it's a networking event of sorts too for that. Yeah,
Absolutely, on steroids.
right, for sure. I'm kind of curious, was there something at Licensing Expo that put a smile on your face or that took you by surprise?
I think in terms of what I saw that I was really impressed with, the conversations around NIL, which is name, image, likeness for college athletes in the United States, is very, very exciting. And a lot of work is being done. It's really groundbreaking, and it's a whole new world for collaborations and partnerships. So super interesting, I thought, and exciting for the industry overall.
Yeah, very true on that front, for sure. You know, Licensing International, it does partner with other events and conventions. Tell us what the goals are for those.
We know as a small trade association, we can't go it alone. So we seek out adjacent industries, partners that really make sense. So if you think about marketing, which is an adjacent industry, PR, advertising, trademark protection, we also work very closely around anti-counterfeiting programs. And so we convened recently in New York a program that was working with the FBI, Interpol, a few other partners, Alibaba, Amazon, as well as IP owners and manufacturers and retailers about the opportunities around anti-counterfeiting and what we should be doing around that, which is a super important issue, of course, for the industry, but also for broader consumers. We also work with different government trade associations. So Hong Kong Trade Commission, we also work with the Shanghai government as well, creating local programs and educational outreach as well as conferences and seminars.
That is a lot. So,
It is. And we're just getting started, I feel like.
you touched on it, but consumer products, it makes up a huge part of brand licensing. So, and especially recently with the shopping experience changing so much, how has the shopping experience changed in recent years to better embrace consumers' desires for more engagement when they shop for items that, frankly, we know they don't need, but it's going to make their lives better or more fulfilling? What are your thoughts on that?
When someone goes into a store, when a consumer goes into a store, everything that hits them from the time they walk into that store, whether it's a sensory experience, a visual experience, it's really got to hit all of the high notes. Because otherwise, the consumer can just go home and shop online very easily, and it becomes very transactional. But it means developing in-store experiences, having really trained sales staffs who understands the product, who understand consumers and what they might be looking for, as well as a very visual and sensory experience that's all very positive. From the time that consumer walks through your door to the time they are leaving the sales counter, that what they've walked away with, in addition to a great product, is a great experience, because that person then will come back and they'll also tell everybody else.
Very true. Another way that consumers can connect with brands is through location-based entertainment, which of course benefits companies like Falcon's. And, intellectual property owners have really embraced that concept of location-based entertainment, live events as well, pop-ups. It's just another way to showcase their brand in unique ways. So why do you think crowds are flocking to these types of outlets?
Well, because we want experiences. Humans are very social. And what we're seeing is that from a family perspective, they are purchasing experiences much more, because that can really stay with them that much longer. And there's also the opportunity to take home some of that experience through whether it's fun programs that they've purchased or some kind of plush, or I'm thinking of Harry Potter with the wonderful wand. All those kinds of things really stay with consumers. And so that's why, from a consumer insights perspective, this has been really the uptick over the last year in LBE has not come as a surprise, because we've been seeing this as a trend despite a slight blip because of the pandemic. But ultimately, consumers are really doubling down on experiences.
Excellent. And well said. I don't think you have a crystal ball, or do you?
I don't have a crystal ball.
Well, okay, crystal ball or not, tell us what you see in brand licensing's future.
It's a very, very bright future. Consumers remain committed to consuming. Yes, they're making choices, as we all have to make choices, no matter what kind of budgets we have. Everyone makes choices. Inflation has been a real impact on our business as it is with every other business. But ultimately, when we take out for inflation, brands perform. Consumers absolutely are committed to purchase intent based on a brand preference. And that's really a brand that's been brought to most consumers, as I said earlier, through the business of licensing. And so licensing continues to drive consumer engagement, and we're only seeing the upside for this long term.
Well, great. All right, Maura, thanks for joining us on Experience Imagination.
Thank you so much for having us, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
I now have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Connolly, CEO and founder of Retail Monster, a brand extension and licensing company. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Well, yeah, before we get into the details, I want to set the stage by asking you to give us one hugely successful and well-known example of brand licensing.
I would say the most iconic example that I've been part of is when I joined DreamWorks. A lot of the reason why I joined them is because they had recently acquired the Trolls brand, which I think most of us grew up with at the top of our pencils. And so over the course of 3 years, we had to, reestablish these characters, evolve them dramatically. We all know the story about Mickey Mouse having 6 different looks and feels over his 100 years. And we had to bring it to today's standard, all while telling a great story and getting the product on shelf. And so I think that journey is probably the best example, because we actually started with a vintage retro program at Target that was celebrating the original Trolls, leading up to the movie marketing that was a whole brand new Trolls that the world hadn't seen yet. and then launching the new iconic trolls both theatrically and on shelf day and date. DreamWorks proved not only were they a great storytelling company, but they could deliver meaningful consumer products.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent example. So let's talk about Retail Monster. What does your company do really well?
We are a licensing agency. There are several fantastic licensing agencies in both the U.S. and across the globe. I would say our key differentiator is we are in the business of IP advisory, helping companies get their brands off the ground in a meaningful way on TV, in movies, in games. And then we have a differentiator where we call on retail. Everyone in the consumer products industry knows we don't sell anything physically to retailers. The suppliers do that. Mm-hmm. But the suppliers go to retail with hundreds of brands. And so to ensure that our brands cut through the noise when they're sitting in front of a buyer with 80 T-shirts on the wall and 60 brands represented, we like to get a hold of those retailers ahead of time, walk them through the story of the brand that will be presented to them by the supplier, so that when the supplier does get there, the buyer knows that the story behind that brand and buys into what it is we're developing. So I would say the mixture of retail brand development that our organization does, as well as helping companies deliver a brand that's less about looking through a window and more about looking in the mirror saying, I want to be that brand. I want to be that character, so that we provide that connection for people to actually want the products.
Well, there you go. Story comes into play yet again, as it normally does, right?
Always does. So you always got to envision a brand on a kid's bedroom floor. Right. And if you give the child something they aspire to be, then it'll work. If you give them a character that they don't aspire to be, it'll never work. And I remember struggling through, I think it was Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, why can't we sell more Jack Sparrow? Because he stabs his friends in the back and runs from every fight. Mm-hmm. You have to develop characters that the kids fall in love with and want to become.
That's very true. So tell us, how integral is brand licensing to growing a brand?
I think it's extremely integral. I believe all the studios are looking for it. If you put out great content and you put out successful movies, you're operating on anywhere between an 8 to 10 margin. But when you put out a movie that resonates in the consumer products, you could turn that brand into a 60, 70, and in some scenarios, well over 100% margin brand. If you look at all the years Disney put out Pixar Cars, right? The movie was successful. The products were uber successful. And, you look at something like Lucas, all the Star Wars movies, good, bad, or indifferent, the products reign strong. And products is a consumer touch point at retailers like Walmart, who get 180 million people in their stores a week. Having product on shelf is extremely important. You're going to get more eyeballs in a store than you are on a theatrical marketing initiative or a TV advertisement. So it's all about having product in the marketplace, not only during the tentpole events, but between the tentpoles, to keep your consumer and your loyal fans immersed into your brand.
So, Michael, it's got to be a very long road from establishing a brand to getting its products into brick and mortar spaces. You just touched upon consumer products. So give us an idea of how long that journey can take.
With a brand that has potential in the toy space, you're working 2 years out. And the thing is the first thing you got to do is eliminate 1 year, because the buyers at retail buy a year out. So you almost got to rewind that time and say, okay, if the buyers buy a year out, I need to have my licensee on board 2 years out, so they have enough time to develop product, develop packaging, and then pitch the buyer at about the 18th month before the movie launch mark. From a franchise perspective, it's a 3-year process, because again, consumer products, we like to feed the storytellers, give them ideas that won't infringe on their creative vision. We want to instill some play patterns, some play engagement patterns that consumers love. We like to instill those in the creators at a very early point, which means we're actually 3 years out when we're feeding them ideas and how something could work better on screen to wind up on a kid's, playroom floor. So if you're lucky, a successful preschool series will last, 3 years. It'll be on the rise, and then it starts declining. In some scenarios, like Paw Patrol, I think that's going on year 10 or 11 now. So, all of it's really important. And the more that the creative and consumer product teams can work together, the more they can fill those gaps of content with great product plays and keep that brand relevant for decades.
Well, that must be one of the hard parts of your job, right? To keep it relevant, keep things fresh.
It is. It is. It's even harder to, some of these IPs have been around 60 years. And it's harder to push for an evolution on brands. Someone made something 60 years ago, 50 years ago. Maybe their estate owns it today. But it's trying to convince them that storytelling evolves. The same movies that came out 60, 50, 40 years ago, there's new ways to storytelling that are more relevant for today's consumer. Anyone that has kids have seen them interact with YouTube, and it's all about swiping up. And we're the generation where swiping wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
And so, you just have to evolve brands so that they can be told from a narrative that's relevant for today.
I'm almost wondering, especially with brands that are trying to establish themselves and get a foothold, do they try to sell online first and then enter brick and mortar?
Some brands with known IP can roll out to bricks and mortar pretty quickly, especially if it has a successful sales history, which a lot of these brands do. For the ones that do not have a history, I would say going direct to consumer, DTC under their umbrella, is a fantastic way to get there, because I will tell you, you'll never sell better merchandise than what's on your own website. We work with a brand called Slumberkins, and it has an Apple TV series globally. It's in plus 80 countries via Apple TV. 99.9% of their business is DTC today. And so just this past year, we evolved them outside of their DTC to both Amazon and Nordstrom's, and the domino effect to take place thereafter. They launch a very highly successful DTC brand. It's sizable today. That's very impressive. When a TV show launches, most retailers want to give it time for the customer to fall in love with that show, and then you launch products. So I'd say 5% of new brands might get a shot at the big retailers like Target and company. And so rather than waiting until they are interested, to parallel path with your own DTC site is a fantastic opportunity. And do collabs too. Collabs are really underestimated, but work with a brand you aspire to partner with, launch your brand with that brand. You're going to ride some of their shirt tails. They're going to ride some of your shirt tails because maybe you're addressing a demo that they need. And that'll help establish your brand as being a cool brand. And, it'll make life a lot easier down the road.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. What are some of the things that you and your team consider when working with clients to maximize their brand's growth?
It's getting buy-in from the brand early on. It's, if we can't convince a brand that it's a marathon, not a sprint, I'm not sure we want to be partners with that brand. Our planning starts with year 5. We're not looking to race a brand to market just to make money, because we treat every brand that we partner with as if we were still at DreamWorks or Nick or Disney or any of those studios. We treat it as a very special brand. And, we have a vision. And again, it's to increase a brand every year for the first 5 years and then go from there. We know certain SVOD partners won't resonate for kids. You can put it on there. It might be one of the biggest AVOD platforms or SVOD platforms in the world. Doesn't mean it's going to work. And so we think of ourselves as partners. And if someone just dictates and says, you know what, we're one and done on this, I don't believe we'd even strike a partnership with that company.
I could see that. For sure, you guys are in it for the long haul. It takes a lot of commitment and a lot of time. Hey, I want to ask you about LBEs because I'm guessing Retail Monster does get involved with location-based entertainment. If so, how? We
do. When we strike a deal with a licensed brand, we would like traditional consumer products, we would like live events, and we would like location-based entertainment. And we are in position, obviously our relationship with Falcons Beyond and our relationship with Hershen, who have 27 parks and resorts in North America, and our relationship with Cedar Fair and companies like that. We feel like if we have a brand that fits a need that they have at that location or several locations, we'll absolutely present it. That's even better storytelling than publishing. You could put that way ahead of anything consumer products does because it's immersing the customer in your brand.
Oh, yeah. That connection is there.
100%.
All right, Michael. Well, it was great having you on. I loved all your insight. Great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day.
That will do it for this episode. Thank you again to our guests, Maura Regan from Licensing International, Michael Connolly from Retail Monster, and Daryl White from Falcons Beyond. All right, listeners, we want to thank you as well. We appreciate you, and we hope you come back for the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. To keep up with our latest news, visit us on the web at falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please email us at podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.